Hi, hello, my name is Gomer Joseph. I hope you've all been having a great day so far. Welcome back to another True Crime Tuesdays video. If you are new, I welcome you. Before I discuss today's case, I'd like to mention my Christian suspense book series, which is titled Never As It Seems. The first book in the series is available on Amazon, and you can read it on any device on the Kindle app for free. Not only that, but I do have another book series, which is the Juliet Clark book series, which is about a Haitian American teen sleuth who happens to be a successful true crime YouTuber. The first book in this series is titled Murderer at Heart. The links will be in the description box below if you're interested. Today, I'll be discussing the solved murder of Lynette White. Let me tell you, this was a difficult and confusing case to research. This case was eerily similar to the Central Park 5 case, and if you don't know about that case, then I suggest that you look it up because it is a long mess. Thankfully, like the Central Park 5, those who were falsely accused were released, but they shouldn't have gone through what they went through if the police had done what they were supposed to. Overall, this is such a tragic, messy case, and praise God, Lynette was able to get justice. Now, I encourage you all to do your own research with this case and not to just look at my video for all of the information. Here we go. Lynette White was born on July 5th, 1967, in Cardiff, Wales, to parents Terry White and Peggy. I believe her last name is Pasticcio. I do know that Lynette had two sisters and a brother. Now, Lynette was described as a girl who was popular, quiet, kind, friendly, a girl who loved music, and an overall amazing personality. Sadly, Lynette did have a rough childhood. Her parents divorced, but then the unexpected happened. When Lynette was about 14 years old, she was kidnapped by a gang where she was forced into prostitution. Thankfully, Lynette was able to escape, but sadly, later down the line in like 1988, I believe, she would go back into prostitution to pay for her boyfriend, who is Stephen Miller, to pay for his drug addiction. So I'm a bit confused. I'm unsure if she did this willingly. Like some sources say that Stephen was her pimp, while Stephen denied being Lynette's pimp, claiming that he begged her to stop. But overall, the fact that she had to go into prostitution after escaping that at such an early age, it's just very sad. And, I wish, she could have done so much better than to date a drug addict. Like, obviously, I'll just, let me not ramble right now, but of course, she would have done better without being involved with somebody who was addicted to drugs. And most of all, getting out of that lifestyle probably would have spared her own life. Let me just add that Stephen also did have mental disabilities. From what I gathered, he had the mind of an 11-year-old. Obviously, that's still no reason for him to be taking drugs. Like, even at 11 years old, like, I knew that taking drugs was not good. So, pretty much talking about Stephen's disability, I do think that it's important to add when I'm discussing this case. By February of 1988, Lynette is 20 years old at this time, and she had a friend who was named Leanne Vidley, who was also a prostitute. She lent Lynette the keys to the apartment so that she could get clients. But, unfortunately, after Leanne lent Lynette these keys, Lynette was not seen alive after that. For 5 days, Lynette went missing, and even Stephen Miller was unable to get in contact with her. So since Lynette had the keys and was still missing, Leanne was unable to get into the apartment, so she got a ride from a friend who was a taxi driver to go to the apartment to get a spare key. But while she went into the apartment to get the spare key, I believe that she was still unable to open the apartment door. So Leanne she basically felt like she had no choice but to inform the police that Lynette was missing for 5 days because, as a good friend, she was worried. But when the police arrived to the apartment, they found a shocking sight. Lynette was found dead on the apartment floor, and pretty much her death is just too gruesome to go into detail. Bottom line is that Lynette was stabbed to death. So when Lynette's family had heard about the news, they were clearly devastated. So with this murder, of course, there had to be an investigation. So the investigation began, and after getting an eyewitness account, a sketch was drawn out of a white man. Now, I want you guys to remember that. Keep that in your mind about how the sketch looked like, because that will be very important later on. So other than the sketch, there was also another suspect named Mr. X, who is a convicted sex offender, and he was diagnosed as a psychopath who lived near Lynette. So when police interviewed this Mr. X, this guy admitted that he did pay Lynette for her services and was unable to provide an alibi, but eventually, due to DNA evidence, Mr. X was ruled out. But I see that they were using DNA evidence earlier on in this investigation. I'm just gonna assume that the police just got lazy and decided, hey, we don't need this DNA evidence. How about we just go ahead and do something very sinful, very unethical, I'm pretty sure even in the UK is illegal. Sorry if I didn't mention that earlier on. Yes, this case does take place in the UK, and again, I'm still gonna try to find some other cases in different other countries, because when I'm talking about cases, it's always, at least when I'm always talking about international cases, it's always in the UK. But rant is over. On December 9th, 1988, police somehow shifted from looking for the white man in the sketch and approached John Actie, who was mixed. And he was also a husband and a father of 3. So they approached John outside of his house and pretty much forced him to go to the police station, where he also saw Stephen Miller, who was Lynette's boyfriend. He saw his cousin, Ronnie Actie, also saw Tony Paris and Yusuf, I hope I'm saying this right, Yusuf Abdullahi or Abdullahi. I'm so sorry if I butchered that name. So Stephen Miller, when he was questioned by police, he was actually questioned 19 times over 13 hours. So at first, when police interviewed him, he denied having any part in the murder. Now, keep in mind that Stephen also has a mind of an 11-year-old. So he eventually confessed, quote unquote, to killing his girlfriend, Lynette. At the police station, police told John that there were witnesses who said that he was at the apartment, and pretty much, to make a long story short, they pretty much accused him of murder, a murder that he did not commit. So the trial began in October of 1989, where these witnesses were called, and the witnesses were Lynette's friend Leanne, and another prostitute who was Angela. I believe her last name is Celia. At first, both women stated how they knew nothing about the murder, and then all of a sudden they claimed to have been across the road where the murder took place. Now, there was this guy named Mark Gromek who lived in the same apartment, and a Paul Atkins who also testified against the 5 men. But before then, their statements changed 4 times. By the end, Stephen Miller, Tony Paris, and Yusuf, might I add, had a solid alibi, where 13 people stated that he was 10 miles away from where the murder took place. 10 people who gave him an alibi, but yet he was still found guilty, while John and Ronnie Actie were found not guilty. At first, these men were known as the Cardiff 5, but now these are the Carter 3, since 3 of the men were found guilty of this murder. And, I would assume that this case was really big in the UK, just like how the Central Park 5 case was pretty big in the US back in the day. So after the Carter 3 were sent into prison, there were protests and campaigns demanding for the release of the 3 men. So 2 years later, in December of 1992, there was, after all this attention towards the case, they were able to get a court of appeals where Stephen Miller's forced confession was shown. So in this video, the detectives were not shown in a good light, since it was shown that they were basically beating a confession out of Stephen, which makes sense as to why the video wasn't shown the first time in court. So let me just go ahead and say, I understand that Stephen, wasn't the best guy for Lynette, but yet just because he did one thing doesn't mean that you have to accuse him falsely of doing another thing. It will be one thing if you sent him to prison for probably taking part of maybe trafficking Lynette, and even probably sending him to prison for drug relations, but as to send him into prison for murder and forcing a confession out of him, it's not looking good. So after the court was able to watch this video, after looking at this newfound evidence, Stephen Miller, Tony Pierce, and Youssef were released from prison. Since the UK police were exposed for corruption but not punished for it, it was time to bring the real killer to justice. Before that, some weird things happened in Lynette's family. So in September of 1996, Lynette's father, Terry, showed up to John Ackley's house with a shotgun. So clearly, Terry felt like his daughter's killers were just roaming free. So John Ackley, thankfully, was able to see what was going on outside of his house through his window. So clearly, he did not open the door. I would assume that he called the police because Terry would face some jail time for attempted murder. Sadly, he would die in 2001 after this freak accident of falling down his steps, dying before finding out who actually killed his daughter. Lynette's brother also died 9 months later at 28, but I'm unsure about how her brother died. So in September of 2000, the case was reopened, and I don't understand why the case wasn't reopened, when the 3 men were released in 1992, but hey, at least it was, better late than never, I guess. So the case was reopened, and they were trying to find the killer through DNA evidence, which is something that the police should have done right after they cleared this Mr. X. But I guess, once again, better late than never. So looking for the DNA to match the unidentified blood seen the night Lynette was found. At first, their findings led to a 14-year-old boy, which partially matched with the DNA. Clearly, this boy was too young to have committed the murder, and this was 2000, so 14 years before 2000. So he was probably 2 years old if I'm doing my math right. I suck at math, but hey, obviously still he was just too young at the time, or there's no way that he would have been able to kill Lynette. Bottom line, he was just too young. So they eventually got in touch with, after, getting this DNA evidence, they were able to get in touch with a 38-year-old uncle of the boys, whose name was Jeffrey Gafford, who was known to be a loner who had drinking issues. The craziest thing happened when they approached Gafford. He was found buying a lot of meds, so the police knew that they had to rush. So I would assume that he knew that the police were looking for him. So when they broke into his place, pretty much, Gafford had taken 64 tablets and overdosed, and the police found him overdosing and confessing that he killed Lynette, how he waited for this day for 15 years and that he deserved to die. Now, he was actually very right about that. He did deserve to die, but he was rushed to the hospital and he didn't die. So before we go on, the witnesses, quote unquote, were forced to make statements against the Cardiff Five, and I guess, not I guess, but it looks like the police were forcing, basically maybe even blackmailing all these witnesses. Because, for example, Leanne, who is Lynette's friend, was told that her son will be taken away from her if she didn't testify against the Cardiff Five. The police went as far as to show her pictures of abused kids in foster care. I don't know what's up with the officers in the UK. Not that the officers in the US wouldn't do that, but that type of behavior is just ghetto. On July 4th, 2003, while we in the US were celebrating our freedom, Gafour lost his as he pled guilty and was sentenced to life in prison, almost allowing 5 other men to take the fall for a murder that he committed. Moral of the story: don't kill people. That's one moral. Another is that if you're gonna work in the police force, don't be lazy and accuse innocent people just to get a conviction. I'm pretty sure we've all heard stories about wrongful convictions in this country, but how many cases are there that we don't know about in this country and all over the globe? So once again, by God's grace, Lynette got justice, but earlier on in the investigation, if the police had only done what they were supposed to, they wouldn't have added more victims into this mess. Praise the Lord that truth prevailed by the end, but it's still sad that Lynette's life ended that way. We could only have hoped that she took a different route in life, but sadly, what's done is done, and I just hope that young girls like Lynette could understand that they don't have to do certain careers to please a man or even get by. I understand that lack of money can put you in tough situations and can make you make tough choices, but just remember that earning money is not worth sacrificing your life for. First, I thank you all for watching. Second, I thank you all for bearing with me because sleep deprivation is not good at all. Y'all, I was just falling, stumbling with my words today, but thank you all for bearing with me. Hopefully next time I'll be recording this, I'll be able to, get my sleep pattern right. So, thank you all. So, if you did like this video, please feel free to hit the like button. If you have any thoughts on this case, please leave your thoughts in the comment section. If you'd like to see more videos from me, please feel free to subscribe and click the bell to be notified about the next video. If there's a certain true crime case that you'd like me to cover, go ahead and let me know. I will see y'all for the next True Crime Tuesdays, and I will talk to y'all later.